Hello, welcome to Volume 2 of your ACT tips. Let's check out the next 5. So today we're going to specifically look at 5 ways in which commas confound you. Confound means to confuse, and boy, I get confused when I'm looking at all of these commas. So there's actually 13 ways of looking at a comma, but these are the top 5 that appear on the ACT and that students tend to mix up. So we are going to focus on them. But if you want to study all 13, if you have a lot of time before your test, for example, then by all means, you should do that. In fact, there's a poem by Wallace Stevens called 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. And just like he looks at that bird in 13 different ways, you should look at the comma in 13 different ways too. But some of those ways are the obvious ones, like putting a comma after a date, which I hope you know how to do by now. Let's go. Okay, so 5 ways commas confound you. We're going to look specifically at comma splices, coordination or coordinating conjunctions, subordination or subordinating conjunctions, non-essential and interrupting clauses, and coordinate adjectives. So to start, comma splices. A comma splice is actually an error. So we're going to talk about this error because it appears so often in student papers everywhere, but in addition, it appears all over the ACT English in the answer choices. Remember, in the ACT English, you are an editor, meaning you're choosing the correct answer that is entirely 100% correct. So within a single answer choice, there can be a couple of errors, different ones. Therefore, you have to know the different comma rules, especially the 5 that confound us most, in order to be able to rule out non-answers or wrong answers. So, simply put, we do not join sentences with a comma. So here's an example that is correct. The students diligently prepared for their ACT English test, semicolon. Their teacher expected they would do well. Now, because of this semicolon being here, that is not a comma splice. That is correct. The non-example where it would be wrong would be to connect these 2 independent clauses with a comma. A comma is not strong enough to connect 2 independent clauses on its own. The semicolon is, though. So how would you remember that? How do you remember that the semicolon is stronger? Well, look at it. It looks like a comma with a period on top. What else can you do with a period? You can end a sentence. What is an independent clause? A sentence. So to have a comma there is wrong. It is a comma splice. It is incorrect. Now there's another way to fix it that we'll get to next, but a comma alone will not do the job. So independence versus dependence is essential to understanding the ways commas confound us. So just a quick review. An independent clause is a complete sentence. It can stand on its own. It's 18 years old. It can rent its own apartment. It can vote. It can do everything it needs to without its parents. A dependent clause, though, cannot stand alone. It needs an independent clause with it. It needs its parent with it. It cannot rent an apartment. It cannot vote. It cannot pass go and collect $200. Okay? So when I have these 2 independent complete sentences and I want to connect them because I don't want all my writing to be a bunch of short, choppy sentences, I need different ways to do that. But a comma is not strong enough. Does not work. 3 ways to fix a run-on sentence. The simplest ones, there are others, of course, because it's English and it's complex, but ending punctuation mark like a period, a semicolon, or a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Those are the 3 most common. Let's look at it. So coordinating conjunctions, coordination is the active state of coming together. So we remember these as the fanboys. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. You were probably taught that in grade school. It will help you to remember that these are the coordinators, the coordinating conjunctions, and you put a comma in front of them, not after them. In front of them, not after them. Okay, but we don't always use them. That's the problem. Did you know it's a mistake to put a comma in front of a coordinating conjunction when it does not belong there? That is also a mistake, and that's why this rule is confounding. It's easy to remember to do it, but do you know when you're supposed to do it and when you're not? So let's take a look. We use a comma before a coordinating conjunction that joins 2 sentences, 2 independent clauses that can rent apartments on their own. Example, the students studied diligently for their ACT English, and they practiced self-care leading up to the test. So This bodes well for them. But if you look at it, the first clause is independent. The students did what? Studied. How? Diligently for their ACT English. It finishes the thought. Now, then I have a comma and the coordinating conjunction. They, subject, practiced, verb, object, what did they practice? Self-care leading up to the test. So it's a complete sentence. It's an independent clause. I cannot connect those two with a comma. That would be a comma splice. I can use a semicolon, which is that strong comma with the period on top, or I can use a comma plus a coordinator. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, any of them. Okay? However, there's a way that the ACT tricks you a lot. They'll put the commas before every coordinator that you see. So every time you see an and, there will be a comma before it, but you don't need one every time you use and. So the non-example, it is wrong. It would be wrong if you edited out the word they. So right here, if I took this they out, just imagine it's gone. The students studied diligently for their ACT English and practiced self-care leading up to the test. No comma. Why? The second part of the sentence, when I take they out, the second part becomes a dependent clause. It is no longer a full sentence because it lost its subject. It lost its mom. So because the second clause no longer has a mom, it's dependent and it needs to go with the independent. And it doesn't need a comma because it's not strong. All right? So if you have trouble remember this, just think about if you say, what do you want me to pick up at the store? Chips and salsa. You don't put a comma before and. You don't say chips and salsa, right? I would like the chips and salsa, please. No one says that unless they're being pretentious. And they're also being grammatically incorrect, and you can tell them. So the thing is, though, remember that chips and salsa, there's no comma before the and. Why? They're not independent clauses. They're just two things being connected with the and. That's it. They don't need a comma, okay? So review that, take your time with it, come back to it. There are a ton of grammar tutorials on the internet. You can just take quizzes, etc. So find the skills you need help with, practice them until they're rooted in your mind. So the cool thing is adding a comma plus a coordinating conjunction, like I said before, it fixes our first problem, which is the comma splice. So if there's a comma in between two independent clauses, one way I can fix that error is just by adding a coordinating conjunction after that comma. So the comma and then it'll fix that problem. Why is this important for ACT English? I told you before in Volume 1, we're vertically scanning the answers. We're looking down the answer columns for where it's the same and where it's different. So in punctuation questions, the punctuation will be different. And I'm going like this because I'll look down and there'll be a comma or there'll be a semicolon down the answer choices. So sometimes they'll have a comma or no comma, and then when you see that coordinating conjunction there, you need to ask yourself, is it independent on either side? And if it is, then the comma plus the coordinator is correct. If, again, they're independent. All right, let's look at the next one. Subordination. Sub means under. So subordination, these are the conjunctions that actually turn an independent clause into a dependent one. It takes away its right to vote. It kicks it out of its own apartment. It is no longer independent. That's why it's called subordinating. It makes it lousy. Not really, they're beautiful words, but I'm just trying to give you tools to remember. Some subordinating conjunctions include after, although, as if, as long as, because, before, even if, even though, if, since, so, that, though, unless, until, what, when, whenever, wherever, whereas, whether, while. Now, a long time ago, I tried to memorize all of these because I didn't think that the logical thing to do is to just assume if it's not a coordinating conjunction, it's probably a subordinating one. Like because. I can remember the fanboys, right? There aren't many of those. So there's the coordinators and the subordinators. There's two different types, two different rules. Fanboys, coordinating. Others, subordinating. That's how we're going to remember it. So taking a look at this, with a subordinating conjunction. This is our confounding commas, number 3, right? Am I on 3? 4, 3. Okay, so when a subordinating conjunction starts a sentence, use a comma between the dependent and independent clauses. Now I'm going to show you examples and you'll probably want to come back to this. If a subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence, we do not use a comma. Okay, so we need to think of the word because. So that means that when you put a comma before because in the middle of your sentence, when because is, it's wrong. And when it's on the ACT, it's wrong. And you've probably been doing it wrong forever because I did. You just think, oh, it's a conjunction because it needs a comma before it because that's what we do with the fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. It's a different kind though. So we don't do that. Why? Because when I add it to the front of that independent clause, it becomes dependent. Remember, you can't start a sentence with because. So if you say, I want to go to the movies, why can't I go? And your parent says, because I said so. That's actually a sentence fragment, right? But I said so, or I said you couldn't go to the movies is a full sentence. But adding the subordinating conjunction in front makes it no longer so, makes it no longer need a comma in front of it. But when these start a sentence or a clause, the comma goes at the end of the clause. So let's take a look. Example, when ACT test day arrives, the students are prepared and motivated to succeed. When ACT test day arrives, comma, the students are prepared and motivated to succeed. Okay? So let's take a look at this and unpack it. So I told you that the subordinating conjunction, which here is when, that when it begins the sentence, then it makes this clause dependent. So ACT test day arrives, or let's make it simpler. The ACT test day arrives is a full sentence. You know that. It's independent. But when I put that when in front of it, that subordinating conjunction, it becomes dependent now. And then I put a comma after it and before the independent part of the sentence, which is the students are prepared and motivated to succeed. Now, the non-example, when would it be wrong? Well, if I swap the order of the clauses, then no comma is needed. Let me show you. So if I say, the students are prepared and motivated to succeed when ACT test day arrives, when the ACT test day arrives. So I'm switching it. I'm going to put this independent clause, I'm going to move it over here in front of this part. So this guy, this comma, goes away. The students are prepared and motivated to succeed when ACT test day arrives. No comma because of this rule, because now the subordinating conjunction is in the middle. So this is really a rule that you could memorize, and it would help you a lot on many of the ACT English questions because, again, these commas appear all over the answer choices. It might not even be an ACT test question that is testing commas necessarily, but they will be in the answer choices and help you eliminate them if they're used incorrectly. So on the notice, I already talked about it, but just a reminder, a subordinating conjunction makes the clause that follows it incomplete. So when they say, because I said you couldn't go, that is now a sentence fragment. It's a dependent clause. Sorry. All right. Non-essential and interrupting. So non-essential, not essential, not required, or interrupting. Now I want to digress for just a moment about interruptions because this takes us back to yield dash questions. There is very often one dash question on the ACT English, but there will be dashes all over the answer choices, just like there are commas. So it's important we talk about the dash, and we will get to that. But students are often confused, like, when do I put commas on either side and when do I put dashes on either side of these interrupting phrases? Well, simply put, you need to think about how harsh the interruption is. If it's more like an aside, then it's got commas. Commas are softer, right? The dash is intense looking. You don't see it used very often because it is almost like an off-topic interruption, or like someone going, hey, like in the middle, interrupting themselves. They're saying, when you think about non-essential clauses, hey, what are you doing over there? That would have a dash on either side of it, and then I would go back to my original thought. When you think about non-essential clauses, hey, what are you doing over there? You need to make sure that you know when to use a comma and when to use a dash. And that example would have used a dash because it's a more hardcore interruption. Next. All right. Oh, I put them in the wrong order. The slide went away. That's terrible. Okay, I'll just talk about them. So I don't have the examples for these, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm too far into the video to redo it. It must have, I don't know what happened to it. But okay, so these are those phrases that are not necessary for the meaning of the sentence. So let me go ahead. I can actually pause and add them back in. Okay, so here's the examples. It was a little bit of a technical glitch. It wasn't showing you this particular slide. So I wanted to show you the examples of when we would use commas surrounding non-essential and interrupting clauses or phrases, and when we would not, because just like in the other examples, it is incorrect or you are making a comma mistake when you use them and they're not needed. So that is also a mistake. So here is when we would use a comma. Maria, the girl in the red shirt, is very nice. Okay, since we have her name already, we don't need the part, the girl in the red shirt, because her name already identifies her. Therefore, there's a comma on either side of the girl in the red shirt. So what I mean is it adds extra information to our sentence. So it's not that it's not necessary, it just means it's not essential. It's not essential to make it either a full sentence or to include all the information. So when you ask yourself, does this get commas on either side of it? You need to ask yourself, if I take that part out with the commas on either side of it, if I just lift it out of the sentence, number one, is the sentence still a complete sentence? Is it still an independent clause? Number two, do I lose any important information? So in this case, Maria is very nice. I'm not losing information and it's still a full sentence. Therefore, the girl in the red shirt is non-essential and I can have commas on either side. These are also known as appositive phrases, if you've heard them described as that. Appositive phrases, it's the same thing. The specifics don't really matter in this instance. But let's look at when we don't use a comma, because this is really important. And very often there's this signal word that will help you, and it's the girl who is wearing the red shirt is very nice. So if you put commas around who is wearing the red shirt, that's actually wrong. I don't know why the slide disappeared again. There's something going on with my computer that's glitching out, but I can explain the rest of it to you. So if you need to, you can go back and pause on the slide, like if you're taking notes. The girl who is in the red shirt is very nice. I need the information who is in the red shirt because it is further identifying the girl. So in the first example, when I used the commas surrounded the non-essential information. I did not need the information about what color her shirt is because I knew her name was Maria. So if I needed to refer to her, I could just say, oh, it's Maria. But if I don't know her name, I'm not going to just say the girl. It could be any girl in the classroom, right? So the girl who is in the red shirt, I need that information when I don't have her name Maria. Therefore, I don't put commas around it because it's essential, okay? So go back and look at that. When it is essential, I can't lift it out without taking away meaning from the sentence that's necessary or without making it a dependent clause or sentence fragment, either or. It doesn't have to be both. It could be either or of those things. Then there's no commas around it. There's only commas around it if I can take it out. And I'm talking about commas on either side of the phrases. So the last one for today, coordinate adjectives. I wanted you to remember that adjectives add to or modify nouns. They add to the nouns, just like adverbs add to the verbs or the adjectives. But let's go. So coordinate adjectives. We use commas to separate coordinate adjectives, but the problem is students can't tell when an adjective is coordinate or not. So when do two adjectives put together get a comma between them and when do they not? Let's figure it out. Because this is a pretty easy one to pick up some points on the ACT English if you can remember this rule and you understand it. So coordinate adjectives are equal adjectives, but how do you tell if they're equal? All adjectives aren't created equal. That doesn't make sense, right? It's about the context. So to tell if two adjectives put together, right? Like saying, the example here is athletic and intelligent, okay? To tell if they were equal, put an and between them and also try to switch them. And if both work, then to add the comma is correct. So here's the example. My two adjectives are athletic and intelligent. The athletic, intelligent boy won many scholarships. This comma does belong here, yes, because these adjectives are coordinate adjectives. They are equal. How do I know? I use my strategy. My strategy is to put the and there. Athletic and intelligent. So the athletic and intelligent boy won many scholarships. Still sounds correct, doesn't it? So it passed that first test. Now I'm going to switch the two and see, does it still make sense? The intelligent athletic boy won many scholarships. Works. So this comma is correct. Now let's look at one that isn't correct. In this example, my two adjectives are new and brick. Okay? New and brick. Those are two adjectives just like athletic and intelligent. But athletic and intelligent are coordinate in this sentence, and new and brick in this sentence are not. You can't memorize the words. It's all about the context of the sentence. So there's no comma between new and brick. The new brick house was lovely. It sounds weird, right? We can't always rely on our ears with commas. Sometimes your ear will mislead you. Like you'll put a comma before because and it doesn't belong there because it's a subordinating conjunction in the middle of a sentence. But in this case, you know, it sounds weird. So let's take a look though. You would not say, the new and brick house was lovely, right? Unless you're pompous. The new and brick house was lovely. And you know, just an aside, pompous people, they tend to overuse grammar. And so in trying to be so correct, they're actually wrong. Something fun to think about. So the new and brick house was lovely doesn't sound right. Therefore, the adjectives new and brick are not equal and no comma is needed. Now I didn't even put the second test on there, but let me show you. So the second test would be to swap them, new and brick. So would I say, which house are you going to move into? The brick new house. No. It's about, does one adjective belong more to the noun or not, is really what it gets into. But that's a lot more complicated than just trying to switch it or put an and there. Okay, so brick is more attached to the house because it's made of it, right? But to test it again, I'm not going to say the brick new house was lovely. I'm not going to say the new and brick house was lovely. Therefore, no comma there. Those adjectives are not coordinate. All right, next. So just to review our 5 confounding commas, 5 ways commas confound us today. 1, comma splices. And it's putting them all out of order. Comma splices. Number 2, coordination. So that's our fanboys. Number 3, subordination. Those are the conjunctions that are not coordinating conjunctions. They are not fanboys. And I do not put a comma in front of them when they're in the middle of the sentence. Now there is another type when I use with transitions that I'll get into, like however or nevertheless. We didn't talk about those. So that's why you need to look at what these subordinating conjunctions do. Okay, non-essential and interrupting clauses and phrases. There are rules for when the commas go on either side, and there are rules for when they do not. So go back and listen to and read about the rules. Finally, coordinate adjectives. There are rules and there's a way to test when a comma goes between two adjectives and when it does not. Now, all 5 of these are on the ACT in the questions and all over the answer choices. So study these 5 and hopefully it will up your comma game for the ACT and beyond. All right, so just something to remember, just a last thought for this volume 2 for you to take away. And this is it. Okay, I've said this a couple times, but it is very important you not forget this. The ACT English answer choices may include a combination of grammatical errors, a combination of them. The correct answer is the answer choice that is entirely 100% correct. 100% correct. So if there's one error in that answer choice that's wrong, this will save you time. If you scan vertically and you know, oh, that comma's used wrong, the whole answer's wrong. You don't even have to read to the end of the answer choice. Do you hear me? Do not read to the end of the answer choice. You're wasting your time. You see one error, exit out. It's not right. It's just not. So it has to be entirely correct. These comma rules can help you in eliminating the wrong answers when you're looking at answer choices that have either misplaced or missing commas. And I'll tell you that most often the ACT test tends to overuse commas. They put them where they don't belong because students don't know all the different 13 rules, and so they're more likely to doubt themselves, the student will, and think, oh, it sounds like I would pause there, so I'm going to choose that one with a comma before because. That's wrong because of the subordinating conjunction rule. Okay, so that's the end. Just comment with a reply if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to help you out if I'm able. Good luck on your ACT English test.